On January 8th, 1918, President Woodrow Wilson addressed Congress and had this grand plan to bring world peace to the entire globe. And so he laid out 14 points of what his plan would be for world peace. And if, in his mind, if we could have these 14 things to go along with in our world, then we're going to see world peace around the globe. This has been a goal for many politicians. We've heard many politicians get up and talk about their foreign policy and how their foreign policy is the best policy, and this is how it's going to happen, and it's going to work. And year after year, election after election, world peace doesn't happen. This has been going on for quite some time. And after Woodrow Wilson gave his 14 points, a year later, he met with world leaders at the Treaty of Versailles, and he was met with harsh resistance. He had this great grand plan. We're going to have world peace, and he presented it to this great treaty, and they rejected it. They ended up signing the Treaty of Versailles, and ironically, many historians attribute World War II to the signing of that treaty. Peace is something that we long for in our world. Peace is something that politicians have promised for decades and generations. Peace is something that most people would do a lot for. They would sacrifice a lot for peace. But as history has shown, no policy can bring peace to our world. There's no one politician or human leader in any country or any nation that can bring peace to the world. There will always be someone in our world that will rise up against the notion of peace. So today, we live in this world where it doesn't feel very peaceful, does it? It seems like every day we read the news and where we're on the brink of World War III almost every day. It seems like there's always something that is in the near future that feels like it's just a little bit chaotic. You remember when COVID first started happening in 2020 and you think, well, it can't get any worse than this. And guess what happened? It kept getting worse and worse and worse. And all the news and all the things that were happening around our country doesn't feel very peaceful at times. And today, this second week of Advent, the theme is peace. For those that were not here last week, those that did not grow up in a more liturgical or traditional setting, Advent is a season that we spend and talk about the waiting and the arrival of the birth of Jesus. It comes from the Latin word adventus, which means arrival or coming. And what that entails for us is that we're not waiting on the birth of Jesus anymore, but we are waiting and longing for the kingdom of God to be here in this earth, this new heaven and a new earth where we get to spend eternity with Jesus in his presence and his kingdom. There is a longing and a desire that we have, and it's in this season that we look and we study and we're like, I want that. I want that hope that we talked about last week. I want the peace that we're going to talk about today. And so this word Advent, coming, arrival, and last week we lit the first candle of hope, and this morning I've invited another one of our advisory team members, Joel, and his wife Jamie, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, to come up and share this morning and light the candle for hope, or for peace, excuse me. I'm gonna mess it up, I promise.
All right, we will light the first candle representing hope. And then as she lights the second candle representing peace, I would like to read some scriptures and then we'll say a prayer. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace, and be thankful. Colossians 3:15. Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests. Luke 2:14. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. John 14:27. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. My favorite. John 16:33. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Isaiah 9:6. If you'll close your eyes, we'll pray. Heavenly Father, When you sent your Son to die for our sin, you gave us the ultimate peace through salvation. This second week of Advent reminds us that you are coming again. But while we are waiting, we can experience your peace in the midst of trials, tribulation, pain, and suffering, busyness, Lord, because you are the Prince of Peace. Jesus, you so graciously offer us peace that passes all understanding. We are so grateful for your peace today. And Lord, we just want to thank you this morning that as we are here in this world, as we are waiting on you, we can rely on you, we can trust in you, and we can find that peace. And Father, lastly, I just ask that you would help us to all be agents of peace to the world around us. People that are hurting, they really need to see you and experience your peace through our life. So help us to be that agent of peace. We just thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Joel and Jamie. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 and 7 is where we're going to be today. The last verse that Joel read there a moment ago. I'm going to read it, and then we'll dive into the scripture today. For unto us a child is born, and to us is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. On the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. This is two short verses that we're going to spend our time on together, but so much hangs on these two verses. Just two quick verses, but there's so much info that is packed into here. And as we mentioned this last week, it just bears repeating. The prophecies that Isaiah is giving are about 700 years prior to the birth of Jesus. That's a lot of waiting. That's a long season of waiting, right? That's the kind of waiting that we don't want to have to think about. We don't want to have to experience because we live in such an instant gratification culture. But for 700 years, the people of God waited and they longed and they desired and they had this hope and this desire for peace, that the Prince of Peace was going to come, and they would read it and they would listen to the prophet. He's coming. And so there's this big promise with a long waiting period. So let's look back at the first part of verse 6. For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given. This is in my mind, a really clear picture of the upside-down kingdom of God. And I'll explain why here in just a moment. The upside-down kingdom of God. The world that Jesus steps into was a world that was not very pretty at the time, right? He steps into one of oppression. He steps into ones where the Romans are controlling the government of the people of Israel. There's taxation, like an overtaxation, which feels like it's happening today, does it not, right? The things that we see in our world and culture, it seems like there's always something that the government needs more of, right? There's never any cuts. It's always, we just need more tax money. And they're being oppressed by the Romans. It's a time of dark decline in the nation of Israel. They no longer had a king. No longer were they a city on a hill, a light on the hill for the whole world to see. No longer did they live with that, but now they're in darkness. All those things were distant memories by the time that Jesus arrived. And now, during this time that Isaiah is writing in this prophecy in Isaiah chapter 9, it's a time of turmoil as well. The Assyrian Empire is rising at this moment, and they are causing havoc and wreaking havoc across the entire Middle East. And they're conquering land after land, nation after nation. The Assyrians are bringing under their reign and under their control. If you study the ancient world, you would know and see that it was not a very beautiful place and beautiful time. It wasn't very peaceful. The only way that it was won was by brutality. You think about the Babylonians. We see their story played out with the people of God as they had them in captivity, as God gave them over to the Babylonians. The Babylonians were known as some of the most brutal people in the world. I mean, no grace for anyone. They would walk into a city, walk into a nation, and they would decimate it. The people, the land, the livestock, just to take ownership of the area, to take ownership of the nation. This is the time that Isaiah is writing in. So now the people of God, they're at one of their lowest points in history. So what does God do? This is how Ray Ortlund puts it. He says, God doesn't raise up another bully, but he brings a baby into the battle. Think about this for a moment. If you were determined to bring peace into this world, would you not, at this time, the ancient world, would you not try to raise up a mighty army that's going to try to subdue and to rule and to reign over the people and to have control over the people? That's what the ancient world would have done. But the kingdom of God is different. He says, no, I'm not going to do it by power. I'm not going to do it by dominion. I'm not going to do it by force, but by a baby. It's backwards, but it's the kingdom of God. And this is God's plan. And he says this as he goes on, that prophet Isaiah, to us a son is given. And I love the way that this is worded. To us a son is given. This signifies that Jesus coming to the earth, God in flesh, was a gift, a full gift of God's grace towards his people. This is a gift of God's grace towards his people. It is given. A son is given. It wasn't given to the Israelites because they deserved it. It wasn't given to the people of God because they've worked for it or that they've earned it. No, it was given only by his free grace. And from this promise to the coming of Jesus, when he actually arrives, all of it is a story of God's love and reconciliation towards his people. And he's working and he's sacrificing everything so that he can have right relationship with his creation. And just as Jesus gave his life, God gave his son. This is the gospel in the Christmas message this morning. To us a son is given. And he goes on. And he says, and a government shall be upon his shoulders. I think one of the things that has become clear to me over the last few years is that trust in government does not seem to be at an all-time high right now. Anybody else? This isn't necessarily a political statement. It just means, I guess it is, but I'm not trying to reveal, like, this is where Derek lands on all the issues. But this is just to say that trust in government, in my opinion, is not really at a high point. It's from both sides of the aisle, is it not? How many times do we have to be promised something? I'm going to change the nation. I wish politicians would just be honest with us and like, I'm just going to do an okay job. Yes, you get my vote. Thank you for being honest, not lying to me. The government, man's position, will fail us over and over and over. I said we're getting closer and closer to an election year, and here's something that is so important that we have to understand, is that politics is a horrible savior. If you put all of your hope and all of your trust in politics or a politician, you are going to end up frustrated. You're going to be disappointed because what does politics always do? It always overpromises and underdelivers, doesn't it? They sell you on a dream. The people of God, they ask for a king in 1 Samuel. God, give us a king. We want a leader. We want somebody to lead us, to lead the people of God. But the problem is that the people of God were missing the point that God was saying, I want to be your king. I want to be your leader. And God had done a pretty good job up to that point, had he not? He led them out of slavery. He'd fed them in the desert. He did all these things and provided for them. But the people of God, no, we want a king. And it was from that point on that for the people of God, does not go very well in history. The history of the people of God. But there's some moments of greatness, sure. You got David, you got Solomon. There's some really solid kings that did some really good things for the people of God. But even in all of their wisdom and all of their knowledge and all of their leadership skills, they had some pretty big failings. Humanity. It's a picture of humanity right there. That the best that we have in the people of God, leading the people of God, were very flawed individuals. The government shall be upon his shoulders, this new kingdom that God is hinting at and pushing towards as he usher in the new covenant. He's saying, no, the responsibility is not going to be on you. It's not going to be on a human. It's going to be on my son, Jesus. One of the things that I've learned in the short few years that I've been lead pastor is that the burden of leadership is greater than you want it to be sometimes. And that's not just in pastoring, that's in if you're a leader in your business place. If you're a leader in your workplace, the burden of leadership can be great. I underestimated this. I was a youth pastor for 10 years and I had church figured out. Right? Because sometimes it's easier to point out what's wrong rather than to be the one that's leading, is it not? It's always a bit easier when you're the employee. Not saying that your job is easy, but to be the one that has the responsibility of leading, be the one that people are looking to for your leadership, knowing that there are people and families that are relying on your leadership for their paycheck and their family's welfare, that's a burden. It's heavy. You business leaders, you know that. You have felt that. Some of you have led incredible businesses and you know the weight, just the burden of that leadership. But God says, in the kingdom of God, it's not going to be on man's shoulders. Because humanity has proven over and over, we're not equipped to lead the kingdom of God. We're broken, flawed individuals. But it's going to be on my son, Jesus. Now, this word government in the Hebrew, it translates as dominion, power, sovereignty. This is something that many people, many leaders have fought for throughout human history. Yet God says, no, that's not going to be on your shoulder as the people of God. It's going to be on my son's shoulders. Alec Motier says this, is that his people's shoulders are delivered when his shoulders accept the burden of rule. What God is saying here is no longer do you have to carry the burden of leadership and leading the people of God. I'm going to take that burden and that weight and I'm going to put it on my son Jesus' shoulders. And his shoulders are far more broad and strong than you think that they are. And so where is the peace? How does peace play a role in this? It's because as followers of Jesus, no longer do we have to rely on the leading of this world. No longer do we have to rely on us living this perfect life so that we can lead the people of God. No, God says, I'm doing all that for you. I'm sending my son Jesus to you so he can take that burden and that responsibility. And he can live the perfect life and he can live the life that needs to be crucified so that you can have right relationship with the Father. And he goes on and he says, and his name shall be called. This passage today, just as I'm already in the middle of it, but we're going to break it down pretty good this morning and just spend most of our time here. But names in our culture, they don't carry as much weight as they did in the Old Testament days, or even the ancient days, the New Testament. For instance, the prophet Isaiah, his name means the Lord saves. The Lord saves. The prophet who wrote so much about the coming Messiah, this coming king that was going to rescue the people of God, in his very name is God speaking through his name saying, no, the Lord is the one who saves. Now, I didn't know this until this week when I looked it up, but my name, Derek, means ruler of people. Pretty good, isn't it? I am 37 years old and I just now figured this out. And now some of you are going to be Googling in the middle of my sermon to figure out what your name means. But it just shows me, like, at least for my life, I've not really paid much attention to what my name means. A name is really a title, isn't it? It's like you know them by their name. You might know, you know their character, you know the type of person they are, but you don't call them by that. I don't call you by your character. I don't call my friend Al, and who's a faithful friend, and say, hey, faithful. That would be weird. Just going to be honest now that I said that out loud, and I shouldn't have said that. Thank you. We call them by titles, don't we? By our name. But as we work our way into this list of names that the Messiah, this coming Messiah, Jesus is named, these aren't just names, but these names are revealing of the character of who Jesus is. There are over 650 names of God in the scriptures, and each one of them reveals the character and the nature of who God is. Think about that for a moment. This is the greatness of our Creator, isn't it? This is the greatness of our God, that he could have 650 names and it never falls short. It continues. Like you could add more and more to them because his character and his nature is so great and so good. I look at that and I'm like, 650 names? Like you could probably get like a couple in my life, right? That's the greatness of him. And so we're going to focus on some of these names here. And he starts off with the prophet Isaiah starts off with the wonderful counselor. Wonderful counselor. Anybody have that friend that's just really good at listening? Like they're the person you call because you know they're not going to try to give you all the advice, but they're just going to listen and they'll give you advice like when it's the right time. You know those people? They're a gift, aren't they? I had to learn this early on in marriage, right? Is that you have to learn that sometimes as the husband, it's not your job to fix everything. Dads, husbands, where you at? No? You haven't learned it yet? Okay. Sometimes you just need to listen, and I'm still not great at it. You got to listen. You don't always have to respond. I don't have to jump in and say, well, here, let's call this person. Let's fix this. Let's go. Like, I don't need to go into fix mode. I need to be a counselor. I need to listen. This could be translated, this wonderful counselor could be translated as a wonder of a counselor. I mean, you look at the wisdom of God and think like, wow, I wonder what that must be like to have that kind of wisdom. It's a wonder of a counselor. It means supernatural wisdom. Now, compare this with the recent king of Israel during the time of Isaiah, King Ahaz, who is known in the scriptures for making awful decisions. And this is somebody that sacrificed some of his children to the fire god and had his children walk through fire, leading the very people of God. And now, this prophet Isaiah says, no, the coming Messiah, the coming king, he's not going to make decisions like that. He's going to be wise, full of supernatural wisdom. This baby that is going to be given to the world, it's going to be a wisdom that you can't even comprehend. But this name is not just about giving good advice. It's not that we treat God as we would a therapist. I need good counsel. Yes, that's a part of it, but that is not all that God is. In the Hebrew, the word shows wisdom and planning as well. He's a good planner. He makes wise decisions. And we could really stop there today because that right there in and of itself should give us enough peace to go on in this life. Knowing that the God that we serve, who is guiding our steps, who is laying our steps before us, is full of supernatural wisdom that is endless. It never stops. It never runs out, right? Jesus never reaches his leadership lid. All the things that the leadership gurus say about leadership and leading people and being good in the business, Jesus never runs out of those things. His wisdom is limitless. He's a wonder of a counselor. And that brings us peace. And then he goes on, he says, mighty God. This is the omnipotence of God, all-powerful God that we serve, all-powerful. Yet he did not bring in and usher in the kingdom with brute force. He did not come in and say, I'm going to lead the army of the people of God, and we're going to capture the city, and we're going to take down Rome. We're going to burn the capital of Rome down right now. No, he comes in with all power, all strength, all might, and he lays his life down. It's the upside-down kingdom of God. Everlasting Father. We're moving through some of these names quickly, but just stick with me. Everlasting Father. For some of you, you hear this word Father, and it brings up some trauma from your childhood because you did not have a good father idol in your life or a father representation in your life. Maybe your dad was abusive. Maybe he was an alcoholic. Maybe he just wasn't around. Caused you harm. And so you hear that word everlasting Father, and it's like, ooh, I don't know if I want a father, if that's what fathers look like. For some of you in the room, you had a great father experience, and your dad was in tune with your needs, and he cared for you. And so this is gonna like resonate really strong with you. But no matter where you fall in that spectrum, whether it's on one extreme on the other side, or if it's in the middle, No matter your viewpoint, the coming Messiah, he's the everlasting Father. And what that means is that this is showing his leading, his kingship. And the Father, what's so interesting about this line is that in the Old Testament, rarely is God ever referenced as Father. It's a handful of times in the entire Old Testament. There was a reverence that was, you would not dare call God an intimate name like Father. You wouldn't do it. They were terrified that they were gonna fall dead because they've seen people like they take God for granted, or they take the laws he puts in place and they don't hold to him, and boom, like they're just dead. And it's like, I don't want that, so I'm gonna have this reverence for God. So rarely is he called Father. The people of God are called sons and daughters, but it's usually, like I said, more reverent. So to call this new king Father, what this is a sign, this new sign of intimacy and approachability with this new king that is coming to the world. He's not just the ruler. He's not just got an iron gavel where he's throwing it down on the table saying, this is the way and this is what's going to happen. No, he's the Father. And what does a good father do? A good father is attentive to the needs of his children. He cares for his children. He looks out for the well-being of his children. This is God coming down from heaven to be with his people, to feel what his people felt. It shows his tender care, his concern. And although we don't like to think about it many times, sometimes even his discipline. It's what a father does. He's a good father. He's the Prince of Peace. Now here's the crux of the entire theme for this Sunday, the Prince of Peace, the Advent theme being peace. There are a few words that could be translated as peace in the Old Testament, but mainly, the one that is mainly used is the word shalom. I have a sign in my office because I'm from the South that I bought in Israel that says shalom, y'all. I kind of liked it, so I bought it. But even in Israel today, if you walk around, they use two different greetings. They will look at you and they don't say good morning. They don't say, how are you doing today? They say, shalom, shalom. Meaning this, what that means is perfect peace. Just think about that for a second. To look at somebody in the eye and say, I want you, first thing in the morning you tell them, I want you to have complete peace today. There's power in that, isn't there? You might hear another one where they say, Shalom Aleichem, which means peace be upon you. But they use it as a greeting and a goodbye when they see you or when you leave, so that you will be reminded of the peace of God that you can have and that is available to you in your life. I want you to have the peace of God. What if we greeted people like that today? Feels weird, doesn't it? Right? It doesn't feel natural to us. Like if somebody greets you the way that you're not used to being greeted, it feels awkward, doesn't it? We have a guy in our community group that's not a hugger. And we are huggers, and we're turning him into a hugger. Even if he doesn't want it, we hug him and we squeeze him, and he loves it. But if you've ever gone to hug somebody that's not a hugger and you're a hugger, that's awkward, isn't it? You ever do that? You're like, hi, and they're like, I don't know what to do. Shalom, shalom, peace, perfect peace. This word, it carries a couple different meanings. One of them is absence of war. It also points to the future. I love that. The idea that shalom isn't just about the now, but it's pointing to the future. Another one is completeness or wholeness. One of the word pictures that they use in one of the commentaries I was reading this week says that a word picture for shalom would be a city that has a wall completely around it and has no gaps or cracks in it. It's solid. It is complete. And what's in the middle of that? Safety, comfort, care. That's peace, isn't it? It's beautiful to think about. But it goes further than not just fighting, because we sometimes see peace as just not arguing or fighting with others. That's what we see peace as, not having conflict. I'm convinced there are some people in this world that thrive off of conflict and others just avoid it. I'm sure there's some middle ground. That's what it feels like many times. There are people that thrive. It's like they always, you know those people that you're maybe Facebook friends with, it seems like they always have drama. They always have some kind of conflict. The shalom it's not just not fighting or absence of conflict. That's part of it. But the call of shalom goes farther, and it says, don't just avoid conflict, but I want you to work together with the people too. So it's not just avoiding that person you have conflict with. No, it's saying, I want you to work with that person. Work out the conflict. Work out the challenge. Become a person that seeks those things out and says, I want to have shalom with you. And so knowing that Jesus, this Prince of Peace, that we follow, we serve, that we have the DNA of us in through the power of God, what implications does this have for you and I? I would say this, is that instead of looking at the world in disgust, which can be easy to do right now. You look at the things of the world and it's like, the world. We end up making it our enemy, don't we? But now instead of that, we can look to Jesus and rejoice and say, look who's come into the world. Not disgust with the world, but look who has come into the world. Does that mean that we ignore the things that are vile and sinful? And no, it doesn't mean we ignore them, but that's not our focus. Our focus is on who has come to the world. The focus in the kingdom is never about what you're missing out on. The focus of the kingdom is what you're getting in Jesus. That's the beauty of the gospel. It's not, look what you're going to miss on. You have no, and it's no, look what you're getting. Look what has been done for you. And so we can look to the Prince of Peace. And here's one thing that I know. If you continually and daily look to Jesus for peace, you're going to have peace in your life. I found myself a few years ago watching and listening to a lot of news. Some of you are like, oh, don't go there, Pastor. Please don't do that. I found myself, I was listening to it on the road, 740 or 790, whatever it was, and it was like, hey, this is good. I need to be informed, right? But one thing that I learned is that the more that I was informed, the more frustrated I was. I was just frustrated with life because I'm like, look at all this bad stuff happening. These people, and you're like, it's easy to see why somebody become like this old grumpy person. Grumpy with life, mad with life, and it's like, I don't know. Maybe your focus doesn't need to be on a certain news channel, but maybe it needs to be more on Jesus. We might say, well, I don't have time to spend time with Jesus. I'm just busy, but then we'll spend 3 hours watching Fox News at night. If we're following the Prince of Peace, should we not be people of peace as well? Listen to what Francis of Assisi said. While you are proclaiming peace with your lips, be careful that you have it even more fully in your heart. We can preach it. We can talk about it. We can proclaim it. We can shout it from the rooftops. We can leave today and go put it on our Facebook, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, and say, look at this. But if we do not have it in our hearts, we've missed it. Do you have peace in your hearts? We're going to transition over to verse 7 because verse 6 in Isaiah chapter 9 really gives us a picture of what this new king is. It reveals his character, this King Jesus. But verse 7 talks more about the kingdom. Okay, so verse 6 is about the king. Verse 7 is about the kingdom. Let's look at verse 7 together. It says, of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. On the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. There is no end to his rule. There's no end to his rule. If you study history, you know this, is that nations have come and gone from the beginning of time. Nations that you will look at and you think, there's no way that nation will ever go away. But they do. You have nations like Prussia, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. I mean, you could go as long list of history of nations that were powerful and strong, had borders, had policy, and all of a sudden it's like they've disappeared. That's not the way it is with the kingdom of God. From the beginning of the forming of the people of God to now, God has been faithful to his word, and he's proved to be a faithful king and leader. Listen to what John Piper says. It says the key that unlocks the treasure chest of God's peace is faith in the promises of God. God's a faithful God. This world and the enemy have been trying from day one to wipe out the kingdom of God off of the earth. And one of the things I love about the kingdom, one of the things I love about how God does stuff, you look at the Middle East. Look at China, where governments have been so strong in trying to suppress and to wipe out Christianity off of their nation. You know what only happens in those nations? Growth. We don't go look for persecution, but the reality and the truth is that persecution has done nothing but grow the church throughout its history. It's grown it. Why? Because there's something that we know on the inside of us that this world can't offer us. It's a peace that passes all understanding. It's a peace that we can't comprehend. It's a peace that we can't get from even having a full bank account, an IRA, whatever it is that you have, then whatever you're looking for your peace, you can't get it in that. This world and the enemy will never be successful in taking out the kingdom of God because there's no end to his reign. And he goes on, he says, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, all the way back to the story of David, God makes this promise to David that the kingdom would be run through his lineage, that king after king would be out of his line and out of his seed. 2 Samuel chapter 7, quickly. It says, in your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever. People of God, the time of Jesus have been looking for this king that was going to come, that was going to live out this throne of King David, the greatest king of the people of Israel. Luke chapter 1, verse 31. Look what the angel tells Mary. And he says, and behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus. He will be great, and he will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David. There's this promise in 2 Samuel, thousands of years before the time of Jesus, and now the angel is proclaiming the fulfillment of this promise. It may not happen in the time that we want it to happen, but the promises of God are never go unmet. They will be fulfilled. They will be true, and this is what is happening here. God's faithfulness to his word, as Piper says, unlocks the treasure chest of peace in our lives. And he goes on to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness this time forevermore. I think there's something in all of us that longs for fairness. We want justice, don't we? If I was to go home today and had one of those beautiful, amazing, delicious crumble cookies at my house, and if I was to cut it up for my children, but I was to cut it up, not with the crumble cookie cutter, but if I was to cut it up in like uneven slices and give somebody a small piece and somebody a big piece, you know what's going to happen, right? That's not fair. You know, it's like, okay, it's a good lesson. Life's not fair, buddy. That's what good parents do. Trying to teach you something. We want fairness. We want justice. We live in a world where justice feels like it's this uneven, right? You see the stories of people that they commit this horrible crime and it seems like they get off easy and you're like, how? see the opposite, where somebody commits what we would consider like a smaller crime and they get this punishment. You're like, wow, that seems a little heavy-handed. The scales of justice in our world will never be even. They'll never be right. There's always going to be bias. There's always going to be unjust decisions that are made. But in the kingdom, we can trust that Jesus leads us with justice and righteousness. In fact, this is why salvation is so important, because without being justified by the work of Christ in our lives, without having your sins dealt with and forgiven, you, if you are not a follower of Jesus, your sin will be dealt with. If you are a follower, your sin has already been dealt with. It's been paid for. It's been accomplished. There's nothing else that needs to be done. It's in his justice and in his rightness that for those that don't trust him, those sins that go unaccounted for, they will be dealt with. And then the last part of this verse, it says, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. Zeal. In the Hebrew, this word zeal is the same word that is used whenever God says that I am a jealous God. It's a determination. It's a passion. I know for myself, I'm a very passionate person. Very passionate about a lot of things. I love sports. Passionate about sports. I love my family. I'm passionate about my family. I love the church. I will defend the church. I'm passionate about the church and the organization that God has created for us, this body of believers. It's a dedicated passion, this zeal that God has to accomplish his word, and he is glad to accomplish it. What makes this, to me, so beautiful is to remember and to point back to why Jesus was coming. Now think about this for a moment. The Son of God sent to this world, God in flesh, humanity, fully God, fully man. But why was he sent? So that he could be the sacrifice for you and I to be reconciled to the Father. And what does the prophet say about God here? Is that the zeal of the Lord made it happen. Isn't that beautiful? The zeal of the Lord, the God's determination, God's passion, God's all of his effort has been to reconcile his people to himself. And he's saying, no, the zeal of the Lord will do this. That he's going to send his son to this earth. He's going to live the perfect life, and he's going to be crucified so that you can have a relationship with the Father. And the Father does it with a smile because he's excited about being reconciled to you and his people again. So you may be here today. You're thinking, okay, we've talked about peace today, but my life feels anything but peaceful. I've got broken relationships. I've got a family member that is we're apart and we're not in relationship. I've got workplace drama. I've got my marriage is struggling. My relationship with my kids in the house is not going very well. You kind of look at it and you think it feels chaotic. It feels unsettled. It feels frustrating. How can I have peace? And here's why Advent is so important. Because in the middle of all of those things, in the middle of your challenges, in the middle of your struggles, you can still have peace if you just continually look to Jesus. Doesn't mean you will have conflict. Now, if at all possible, what does it say? If at all possible, live at peace with everyone. What does Jesus call us to do in the Sermon on the Mount? To be peacemakers, not peacekeepers. So we pursue peace, we look for peace, we make peace. But sometimes it's out of our control and things feel like there's not much peace. What do we do in those moments? We look to the Son. We look to Jesus, who is the Prince of Peace, the royalty of the kingdom of peace. We say, I want what you have, Jesus. And here's the beautiful part about it, is that Jesus does not reserve or hold back any of himself. And he says, I will give it to you fully. The Prince of Peace. The Prince of Peace. but why Advent is so important is because it's the waiting. What the peace that we're looking for and we're waiting on is the ultimate peace that we will find when we're in the new heavens and the new earth, and we're in the very presence of God, where there's no more brokenness, no more sin, no more diseases, no more broken relationships. We can be in the presence of God, and it's like, that's the peace that I'm longing for and wanting and desiring. But we can't forget that we aren't the only people that are waiting on that. For hundreds of years, for thousands of years, the people of God longed and waited for this peace of this Messiah, the Prince of Peace, to come. And he came at God's perfect time, in the middle of chaos, to usher in this new kingdom of peace. Should you bow your heads with me this morning?